Before we get to the Islamists in Tehran, I want to talk about the Islamists in America, starting with Mayor Mamdani, the commie in New York City, and his absurd saber-rattling about arresting Benjamin Netanyahu when he comes to New York to address the UN. Of course, he doesn't have the authority to do that. It was a promise he made as a candidate, but he doesn't have the authority to do it. But it doesn't mean that he won't continue jawboning the issue and taking it to the next step of the larger point. You know, the United States is not a signatory to the International Criminal Court because it's corrupt and because we're not going to subordinate our sovereignty to world governmental bodies. We'll use our legal system, thank you. That's not Mamdani's view.
About why Netanyahu specifically is often targeted in some of your comments. For example, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, he was arrested for a warrant that was here in the U.S., and you were very against that. So I guess how do you place more emphasis on the warrants that were issued by the International Criminal Court than here in the U.S.? How do you reconcile those two?
I would say that the International Criminal Court is a body that seeks to hold those across the world accountable for crimes against humanity, for war crimes, for things of that nature. And I think that the United States should not only be a party to that court, but should also execute the warrants that that court issues. And what I have spoken up about Nicolas Maduro, who I've also described appropriately as a dictator, is that the violation of international law is one that has to also be taken very seriously. It stems from the same belief in the International Criminal Court. And now he is here in New York City. On that day when the United States did violate international law, I made clear that I was in opposition to that. And it all stems from the same belief in how can there be a sanctity in something beyond an understanding of the world where might is right. And
and of course, the predicate for the quote-unquote arrest of Bibi is that he's a war criminal because Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. And I just want to address this again, and I'll use somebody more learned on the topic than I, Federal District Court Judge Roy Altman, on this matter of genocide in Gaza, which you keep hearing them repeat, not just Mamdani, but Tlaib and Kana and the usual suspects, growing in ranks, as you saw, with 107 members of the Neo-Bolshevik caucus voting against continued foreign aid to Israel, something that, by the way, Bibi and a lot of conservative Israelis also want to phase out. But the claim is genocide in Gaza. Judge Altman.
Here's another one. One of the things we do with the judges when we go to Israel is we meet with the MAGs. Those are the military advocate generals. It's like our JAGs, they call them MAGs. These MAGs are deployed in the field with the commanders. But unlike in America, where a JAG's advice is precatory, it's aspirational. You can follow it if you want, but the commander can disregard it. In Israel, the MAG's advice is a mandatory order that must be followed. And we have seen dozens and dozens of videos where the pilot of a drone or a plane is over a clear Hamas target. Guys holding their firearms and their rocket-propelled grenades. And the pilot comes over and says, I'm ready to strike. And then something astonishing happens. Some nerdy Jewish lawyer comes over the airwave and says, hey, what's that on the top right part of the screen? What's that on the bottom left of the screen? 2 children playing soccer 50 meters away. 3 women holding a loaf of bread. Strike canceled. Strike canceled. Over and over again in Gaza, legitimate military strikes right before our eyes were canceled because of the need to preserve and protect the enemy's civilian population. And that's why, as John Spencer has written, as Richard Kemp in England has written, Israel has the lowest militant to civilian kill ratio in the history of urban warfare, and yet it is Israel that is being dragged before the ICC and ICJ on preposterous claims of genocide. Ask yourselves why.
For more on this topic, please be joined by Richard Goldberg, former National Security Council official and U.S. Senate aide, currently senior advisor at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Rich, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm just on before we get to the mullahs in Tehran, the mullah, if I may be so bold, being hyperbolic slightly, in New York City, and his obsession with feeding red meat to the base by saber rattling in the direction of arresting Bibi.
I mean, Mamdani is a Marxist Islamist. That's just who he is. That's the ideology. I mean, this is somebody who was one of these kids that you saw on college campuses rabble-rousing and creating an encampment years ago when he was in college with Students for Justice in Palestine. And he grew up to be Students for Justice in Palestine in charge of New York City and now have this platform for the world. I mean, it's scary stuff, quite frankly, for the United States. And so rather than, put out a fire of Legionnaire's disease that's breaking out in New York right now that he's under assault for, he spends his time talking about something he has no business, no jurisdiction whatsoever, about arresting Benjamin Netanyahu, totally ridiculous, and defending a court that seeks to arrest Americans without any jurisdiction, without any base, because a bunch of Islamist Marxists in The Hague might say, hey, we don't like what you did to Maduro. We're going to indict Donald Trump, and we're going to indict Pete Hegseth, and we're going to indict General Kane, and we're going to say that you have arrest warrants for them. They still have investigations. It is on the back burner right now, but any moment they want to, Donald Trump leaves office, they bring it back on American special forces for alleged war crimes in Afghanistan. So according to Mamdani, he's going to be willing to go and arrest Americans who are not members of the court, no jurisdiction, no basis, just because they hate us. That's where this all leads. That's why you've heard Secretary Rubio so eloquently say, we're going to take the fight to the ICC because they're coming for us. Israel is the canary in the coal mine. They hate America. That's true at the UN. When you're dealing with Islamist Marxists in general, it's usually about America. Israel is just something easy for them to use as a punching bag.
That's right. And I mean, we saw this spectacularly just the other week with some popular in their circles, podcasters, media types on the neo-Bolshevik or Islamist Marxist left. I guess probably Islamist Marxist is a better, more accurate description. I mean, jetting off to Tehran to memorialize Ayatollah Khamenei and decry the great Satan, their home country, America.
Yeah, I mean, you played that clip of Maduro and Mamdani's defense and his opposition to the arrest of him. I mean, what a preposterous position. Maduro, of course, was the safe haven in Caracas all these years, and Chavez before him, for Iran. The IRGC, Hezbollah, they all set up shop in Venezuela. I mean, they were all plotting our demise in this narco-terrorist network, moving drugs, but obviously using the drugs to finance the terrorism, spreading throughout South America, right on our backyard. Reports of a lot of people coming in across a very open border during the Biden administration. And so for him to say, no, we're the ones violating international law to go after a narco-terrorist and have a warrant through a judge, through our process, and bring a man to justice for what he's done. But this court across the ocean we're not a member of can just say, hey, we hate America, we hate Israel, we're going to indict a bunch of people, and we have some sort of violation of international law not complying with that. I mean, it's such a twisted thing. Of course, you get some radical, ridiculous people going off to Tehran to memorialize the supreme leader. I mean, these are the people on college campuses that are holding up Hezbollah flags and Hamas colors. I mean, they truly have been indoctrinated, whether it's through social media or whatever other means, to hate America. This is a real danger to us that's on this radical left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why Rubio's speech last week on the topic was so good and timely, necessary. And by the way, just on the Maduro score, for those who hadn't caught it, continuing consistent with this being a law enforcement action, a trial date has been set for June of next year. So he'll have his day in court. Want to get to other matters in the Middle East. This deal with the Saudis to build out nuclear energy capacity is not being received well by the left on the Hill. What's your take on the nature of that agreement that was announced and the timing of it?
Well, the timing is very interesting. There might be something going on behind the scenes that we're going to see start choreographing and playing out. I mean, the president, just while you've been on air, just put on his Truth Social that this deal only moves forward if Saudi Arabia joins the Abraham Accords. So maybe there is some choreography going on. But you're right, Dan. I mean, to see people freak out about the idea of the U.S. partnering with Saudi Arabia for a civil nuclear program, and then screaming, no way can you give Saudi Arabia any pathway to nuclear enrichment. These are the people who have been banging the drum for years saying JCPOA, Iran nuclear deal, give Iran enrichment. Worse, their policy is to give the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world enrichment capabilities and a pathway to nuclear weapons. But a U.S. ally in Saudi Arabia, that would be a bridge too far under U.S. restrictions and oversight. So, listen, do I like the idea of the Saudis enriching uranium on their own soil? No, I think that's a proliferation concern. And the president is making clear that he's not going to allow the door to be open to enrichment there. We're talking about the same kind of civil nuclear power that we've already done with multiple countries in cooperation agreements like the UAE. And apparently this will be, U.S. companies involved on the ground, U.S. jobs that are selling technology built here in the United States. And I'd much rather the Saudis be hooked on the United States for cooperation in nuclear energy than on the Chinese or the Russians. And so if this is part of rolling out a new pivot back into stronger relations with the Saudis, opens the door to their entering the Abraham Accords and other, better relations and in coordination vis-a-vis Iran, I think that's a very good thing.
The 12-day, I guess we're in the 12th day of the renewed bombing campaign. What's your assessment of the pivot that President Trump has made? The stated goals, he said the other day that basically Pickaxe Mountain is on the hit list. It wasn't last summer, Operation Midnight Hammer. It is now. So seemingly the twin goals of reopening the strait by force and ensuring that Iran has no nuclear weapons program. Where do you think that stands?
Well, those are definitely the two objectives right now underway. Pickaxe Mountain is a facility very deep underground, 300 to 450 feet under a mountain. It's very close to the Natanz facility that we bombed and destroyed last year, but it's been under construction since the Biden administration. They paid the Iranians, through appeasement policies to let them keep constructing it and hardening the facility. We have reports now that they've moved some of their centrifuges in there. That's what the latest from apparently Israeli intelligence is being shared. And so that is a very scary prospect. That facility is close to being done. We can't allow it to go operational. Certainly if they got access to any of the enriched uranium that's underground, that's still buried in other tunnels in Isfahan, move that in there as well. That's a facility that they were building, in my view, for a nuclear breakout in the future. So if we're in active military operations, we should have a military solution and go hit that target, whether it's a delay, a degrade, or destruction. We can't let them keep working there. But on the Strait of Hormuz, I have to say I give the president a lot of credit. This is hard. This has an impact on oil prices. This is an impact on all of us. We don't like it. Nobody likes when gas prices go up. But this, sometimes the enemy gets a vote, and you don't get to decide when the leading state sponsor of terrorism is going to go make a dash to nuclear weapons or a dash to a missile breakout to give them cover long-term for nuclear weapons. And the president has said, I'm not going to let this happen. And now they want to try to take control of a major waterway for the future to keep, shaking us down, shaking the world down to get that nuclear and missile program back under cover of extortion through the Strait of Hormuz. He gave them a chance. He did an MOU. I know we were very skeptical of that. We talked about it at the time. And, you know, I was very skeptical that Iran would hold up the deal, and I really thought the president would end up having to pay an extortion racket every few weeks when they said, hey, we're going to have to close the strait again. Hey, we're going to shoot at ships again. Pay us more money. And, you know, as you get closer to the midterm election, that pressure would build politically to potentially pay that racket. And I was really concerned about that. To his credit, this is a president who is just going to say no to extortion by terrorists. I think a different president would pay the racket. And he is saying, what's going to change in 2 weeks if we go back to the same MOU? What's going to change in 4 weeks? We're going to keep seeing ships hit. We're going to keep seeing oil prices go up. This has to change in a permanent way. And he is letting Admiral Cooper, the head of Central Command, run his target set on all the things that he wanted to do to protect shipping in an international waterway. He's going to complete those targets. This could still escalate a little bit more from here, but I hope that the end result is that we have degraded Iran's capability to hold shipping hostage, and then we go back to escorting the ships. You see the market go back to stability. You'll see prices fall again. Only then it won't be every 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks we fall back into a crisis. Then hopefully it will be in Iran without a nuclear weapons path, without a missile breakout path, and without control of the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, the other thing I like that's attendant to this pivot by President Trump is that that seems to be so far taking the approach that less is more. In other words, there's no need to be talking. This is going to be a week. It's going to be 2 weeks. We're in the 12th day. How long is it going to last? It's like Pope Julius talking to Michelangelo about the Sistine Chapel. When will it be done? When it's done. And that's it. And just leave it there rather than putting artificial timelines on it and telegraphing anything. And just let as you just said, I think rightly, let Admiral Cooper run his target sets. They have a plan. They have a strategy. They're executing it. Let them execute it. And, less rhetorical flourishes about how long this is or isn't going to take, the better.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, from a strategic perspective, this is exactly how to deal with the regime. You don't telegraph, oh, we're wrapping up soon. I'm feeling pressure. I'm getting desperate. I don't like where oil prices are. Oh, okay, the Qataris have a deal. We're talking to the Qataris. Maybe we will have a deal. I'm sending Jared. I'm sending Steve. I'm sending JD. That just signals weakness to the people running the show in Tehran. That signals to them, ooh, maybe the pressure is getting to him. We'll hold out a little longer. We'll keep attacking. This is exactly the opposite course. Of course, for us, we actually have to go to the gas pump and fill up our tanks. I understand that's frustrating because the counterpoint is you're not telling the market this is going to be over soon. So the market doesn't know when this is going to be over, and that's why you see the upward pressure on oil prices. But at some point, this is not going to be months, folks. We don't have target sets for a month when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. This is days, if not weeks. And at that point, once you see that target set achieved, and whatever the off-ramp at that point is, whether it's the white flag from Tehran or an improved arrangement diplomatically that we believe is something that we are in control of, you'll see oil prices come down very quickly.
Rich Goldberg, former National Security Council official and U.S. Senate aide, currently senior advisor at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Rich, thank you as always.
You bet.
And he joined us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
You know what really keeps me up at night? It's the criminals feel more and more bold. They have no fear of any consequences because there are none. So I did what anyone with a family should do. I called Goldilocks. They're not just some cookie-cutter security company. Goldilocks has been protecting Chicagoland homes and businesses for 4 decades, 40 years. And they actually listen. Their technician comes out to the house. He takes a look at what you need to make your house a smart home with his